You know where you are!
This is Appetite for Distortion.
Welcome to the podcast, Appetite for Distortion, episode number 496. My name is Brando. Welcome back to the podcast from Pop Evil, Leigh Kakaty. How are you, sir?
Real good, man. It's good to be back on, man. Congratulations. We're both still here, right? Still growing and still trying to climb since the last time we spoke. So super grateful.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Yeah, we were just kind of shortly reminiscing before signing on today. But for those of you who may remember, Leigh was on, I think it was like episode 230 something, a couple, COVID had just started to happen. And I
Sure. Yep.
remember
Yep.
we did just a phoner, but towards the end, you were kind enough. You're like, hey, I guess I want to show you the house I'm working on. You said something under construction.
Yeah. Yeah.
Is that done by now? I hope so.
I don't think it is, man. I've been back and forth and different places and different places. Obviously, a lot has changed since COVID. So, I think COVID for me personally, I just remember doing anything to keep my mind off the depression that was not being able to play for who knows long at the time, right? So, now it's a much better familiar situation with a new album on the horizon and touring. So I'm much more grateful to rather be talking about that than whatever I'm building. So I'm not a builder, man. So it's all good. But
I'm gl-
but yeah,
all,
yeah,
all that stuff's in the rearview mirror, thankfully,
yeah,
and we're
yeah.
far away from that. So as you mentioned, just a few weeks away, March 21st, What Remains, the new album from Pop Evil, just also released a new single, the third single, Wishful Thinking.
Yeah.
Uh, so I mean, this has got to be, is this an old hat for you with the new? And I mean that as far as the album cycle, or does each one carry something different for you? Like, what's special about this album cycle and this album for you?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a little bit of both. It's old hat in some ways, but it's always new and still different for me. This album, it's been done for a minute now, so I haven't been listening to anything. I don't really know the song order. I mean, I we approved it when the pitch to me. This was months ago. I don't. But in order to stay fresh, I think with my experience, everything for me is about the live show. So I want it to be like it's almost new for me, and we get it there in April, we start touring the spring to just, wow, I forgot about this, or this is awesome. This is so cool, rather than I've heard it for the millionth time, like normally every other album. I feel like I micromanage everything. And by the time the songs come out, I'm a little wore out, so I'm trying to just keep it distant. Obviously wrote it and did the whole process, but once it was done, I'm really trying to just get better at, just trusting the journey and, putting it up for a little bit and giving my mind an opportunity to relax and rest up for, the year and a half, 2 years that it is to push this record. So, looking forward to it. Very excited about this album. Feel like this is the beginning of a whole new era for the band. So, we're definitely excited as a team, as a band of brothers, and we can't wait for this album to finally be out.
It's it's cool that, and what do you mean, like, as far as like the era? What do you consider this era of and that's like the phrase now with Taylor Swift. You're in your something era. So
Yeah, it's
what Pop
like
Evil? What era? What's the word before it?
I just think for me, it just feels like this new start, right? You're always kind of there's chapters in this musical journey, right? And obviously with COVID behind us now, we've had some member changes. It's things are more focused on the guitars, and obviously this heavier side of Pop Evil that we've had in the past. But for whatever reason, things just evolve, and it's this evolution of where the band here is. I feel it's been a 3 album cycle now to finally be here. Obviously, there's a new branding of the logo as well. It just feels like we just needed this fresh bit of energy to start whatever this next chapter might be for the band. The future's up to us and where we want to take it. And obviously with the success we had, but still, we're still a new band in other ways. So being able to just kind of write our script, still not have to totally be tied to sounding a certain way or doing certain things. We could still, put the creativity where it belongs in that live show and really grow this brand, grow this band in so many different ways. So we're definitely excited about, what the future holds for Pop Evil and where our place as band members in it. And certainly where we are off the stage, the way we're supporting each other and the way the communication has been is something that's never been around the band. So certainly behind the scenes, it feels like a whole different opportunity for the band to be positive and, just lay the foundation the right way where we can build on that and hopefully, create some still a lot of great successes for Pop Evil moving forward.
It's cool that yes, because it's a new era, but also, as a radio guy and going back to the days of when I would be the guy talking between the songs and when you were
Sure.
kind of a quote unquote newer band. So in ways you've been around the block for a bit, but there's still such a long road ahead of you. I mean, how do you see it?
No, that's exactly it. It's like um you evolve, right? Like you have to, like you said, we've been around in so many different eras of being, like you said, that radio and how the bands really broke here, and certainly in the United States, that it was it's interesting to kind of have that confidence behind you, right? Like things that didn't work, we don't want to go back in those directions. We don't want, and even things that have worked, it's like, look, when you think about it from the live show perspective, we've already done that. Like we want
Yeah.
to push ourselves to still respect our old catalog and certainly our fans that have been with us since day one. But at the same time, be open to creating new fans to be interested in the band to come on and want to see us live and be a part of this next chapter for the band as well. So in order to do that, you have to be creative in things you're doing. You have to be able to experiment in ways, and obviously experimenting is a very thin line. Things that you experiment and don't work, you have to be very you have to at least be very well aware of those decisions you're making, to keep fans interested as much as possible, but at the same time not to alienate fans and keep them less interested and wanting to come see us live as well. So it's a constant game of chess in a way.
Yeah.
And the cool thing about it is you're playing against yourself, right? You're playing against your old albums, you're playing against your old tours and your old decisions you made all those years ago and up until now. And hopefully, we the best version of Pop Evil is still yet to come, and we're chasing that. We have this term chasing perfection. That's always what we're trying to do now when we think about being out away from our family, friends. It's it's harder. The longer you're in the game, the harder it is to be gone for longer periods of time. So if we're going to do that, we've made the commitment to each other as brothers in the band to just, hey, let's not waste our time here partying and doing those things that can, that are selfishly rooted to take our personal kind of efforts away from the end goal. So, when you have four other guys that are on that same page with you and everyone understands the respect they have for their own individual time, whether that's family or personal other journeys people are trying to take on their own. When it comes to being in the band together, that commitment requires sacrifice. It requires unselfish acts of just like, hey, we're here for each other, rather than, you know what, man, it was a great show. I think I'm going to go get ripped tonight, rather as opposed to, hey, man, I'm going to rest tonight and make sure that I sound great for our fans tomorrow. So there was a responsibility that I think that the band members feel to our fans, having the success we've had, to make sure we have songs that people are traveling many miles to hear, songs that have helped people in positive ways. So when they come see us live, again, we want to make sure that it sounds perfect every night. We want to make sure that that performance is spot on. And obviously, as you age, you want to make sure your body's ready to do that, because when you play as many shows as we do, sometimes a week, it can be grueling on those knees, or it can be grueling, on your back, or grueling, on your muscles in different ways. So making sure that you stay healthy and from a physical aspect individually is so important to just make sure you're committed and show your other brothers that, hey, man, like, I'm serious just as much as you are. Let's go. And when you have guys that are doing that, it's a lot more motivating to it's a lot more fun as well, right? It's a lot more fun to be away from family and friends, knowing that we're making sacrifices rather than we're just, being selfish and taking for granted the people that are back at home supporting us and are here waiting for us. So it's just important to do things right a little different. Again, hence the new era. It's just the mindset is a big part of that. So, with that being said, it's yeah, we're having more fun in ways that we never had before. So with that comes just more fun when you're writing and more fun in the creative process. Your mind's open to be more creative. So, what remains when you really think about the album title, when the shit really hits the fan, or when you're at your lowest, you have that choice. Are you going to give in, or are you going to take a step forward and try to be better the next day. And it's not always easy, but you looking at the glass half full, or are you looking at the glass half empty? And we have that choice, each of us individually, when the wheels fall off and you're kind of set and looking at adversity right in the face. Like when you're looking in the mirror and that adversity is looking right back at you, you have a choice. And what version of yourself do you want to put forward? And that's kind of where this feels like we're at, like individually as well as collectively in the band. And hence the name What Remains. It's a challenge almost to ourselves. What can we do with it? What are we going to do with this opportunity?
That's what you want to hear, I think, as a fan, not just
Yeah.
the ripping guitars and where your vocals can go. It's just the atmosphere of the members itself. You want to know that it's kind of
Yeah.
a band of brothers, or a band of just a band. It's a
Yeah.
band. I think you appreciate that, knowing that you're watching friends on stage, right? Like I
Yeah.
think that adds something.
Yeah, and with Pop Evil, we've had a lot of members come and go. I mean, it's a part of the process, and
Well, you're talking to a Guns N' Roses fan, so
well, there you
I
go. So
know.
you know exactly, right? It's obviously I respect fans and even band members. Like when you start band, you start that dream, you always hope you're going to be with those guys or those people your whole career. But as life happens, and certainly in the era when we came up, I mean, success is different. Success doesn't always mean financial success. So, if you can't pay the bills or people can't pay their bills, they got to do what's best for themselves to just, make a living and to survive in this world. So sometimes with musicians, as everyone's heard, off the scene, it's not always as lucrative as most musicians would like. But a lot of us don't get into this because of the money or the financial success. We get into it because it's all we know. It's our lifestyle. It's our form of expression. So with that said, people have come and gone, but this particular lineup that we have, it feels like, bro, again, you're never guaranteed anything when you're dealing with other people. It's a relationship, even in marriage, you're not
Sure.
guaranteed that you're going to be with that significant other for the rest of your life. You hope so, but at least the language from the beginning, we're all kind of in that same place in our careers. We've all had success, but we've all feel like we've just tipped the iceberg and there's still plenty more left on that bone, meat on that bone that we want to accomplish. So when you get a bunch of guys together that have that same drive, it's easier to push each other, right? Because we all want the same thing. We all want to be successful in a band, right? And we understand at this point in our career that it requires another person. It requires each and every one of us to be able to play the role the right way. And when you can hold each other accountable based on that position, and hey, you told me you weren't going to do that today and I haven't been doing it. We've been focused. Let's get back to chasing perfection, and let's get back to making the show, the best. Or let's make sure that we're writing the best record we can this album. And when you can look at those people in the eye and go, yeah, you're right. If you do find yourself getting off the tracks a bit, when you have four other guys that are really helping you get back on, it can be really beneficial. As looking back at sometimes in the earlier process of being a musician, sometimes you don't speak up on those things. You just kind of assume people are going to fall in line and do what you hope they will. But when you can be supportive of people, not just your fans, not just your family, but your band family, and you guys can come together, and sometimes your band family is the only person that can really understand what it's like, what you're going through, because they're on the stage sharing those moments with you. Your family doesn't understand what it's like to be up and have people cheering for you or booing you, but your band brothers do. You know what I mean? They understand what it's like when you had a bad show. They understand what it's like when you sang bad or you thought you performed bad, and they're there like, whoa, 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 it's not the end of the world. You know what I mean? Like, what if you try this rather than focusing on the bad things? Focusing on things that are positive that can really help you kind of get a mental grasp on not being so negative yourself. And I think that negativity seems to be so much easier this day in this world that we live. It's so easy to pick yourself apart, or that's
Right.
not good enough, or I suck, or that sucks. And I think fans don't always understand that happens for us musicians too, especially in our era, because you see bands like what you're wearing, Guns N' Roses, that was a whole different, those are the legendary rock bands. I mean, it's arguable in this era, are there really legendary rock bands the same way? Sure, of course there are, but in the same way that it was in the 80s, it's different. You know what I mean? Does that make us any less relevant? Of course not, but it's just different. So it's when you're comparing yourself to other bands like Guns N' Roses or whatever it may be, it's easy to, it's easy to beat yourself up, or I'm not good enough, or this isn't, going the way I want it. So it's so important that you have band of brothers that are behind you to be like, hey, it's us against the world sometimes, and I'm right here beside you, man. I'm fighting the fight with you, and we don't, who care, don't listen to all that noise. Like, let's roll. So again, that's just my perspective on it. But when you're there helping and supporting your other members in their positions too, and you're giving each other that energy when it's needed, it just can make it for again a more enjoyable experience. I mean, this business is very hard. Being out on the road, I mean, obviously it's a blessing, and there's a lot of things that make it um, a dream job, absolutely. But there are also things that make it just like any other job. It's brutal. You know, time away from family. I don't care what job you're at, is tough. You know, when you're on the road for 6, 7 weeks. I mean, you know, when you're going to the bathroom and nothing but be about truck stops and Walmarts. I mean, at some point,
Oh boy,
you know, you
you're gonna
crave
catch something.
just a normal bathroom, man. You know, so it's it can be, again, all those things, man, can pile up and lead to anxiety and depression for people. So again, it's so important for us in this new era of pop evil to be supportive, be positive, and really focus on that energy off the stage, because we obviously, most bands can do what they do on the stage. That's almost in some ways the easy part, right? Because playing music is something we all been doing since we were young kids. So by the time you get up on stage, that's when the release happens. It's the time off the stage when you're living on the tour bus or you're traveling with people that aren't necessarily, you know, you didn't grow up with these people. They're not necessarily your friends. They're your brothers, right? And sometimes when you think about family, you're closer to your friends than some of your family, but they're still your family. You know what I mean? So that's kind of how I relate it. I mean, we're not necessarily always the closest friends, but we're the closest brothers. So it's interesting that and probably just because when we get off, the last thing we want to do is go hang out. Now, if we were all living in the same place, it's possible we would, but a lot of times I think when we're off, we all go our separate ways and we go hang with some of those people that we don't see often during the year. But then when we're back on, it's almost like a fraternity. You know, you're back to see your friends again, and this family that you don't know you ever needed, but you're so grateful that you have. And I think that's part of being in a career. You know, when we're about to drop our eighth albums in, you're like, what have you learned? And I think that's the thing I've learned the most, is just how grateful you are for the people that are still around the project. You know what I mean? Those people that are still helping you support the
Sure.
vision that you had when you started, you know, and to be here. I mean, think about those bands that started when we were around, not many of them left. So to still be here grinding it and still be putting out new music is a huge blessing, and it's something that we don't take lightly, and we try to be grateful about it. So we're super stoked about the launch of this next record.
Yeah, right on. I have I appreciate and respect that perspective. I had a similar conversation my last interview with Wednesday 13,
Oh yeah.
in talking about, am I this level of whatever is determined of success, but it's like
Yeah.
I call it, and the same thing to you. It's like almost a humility because you are successful, but
Yeah.
you have that drive, okay, and we're using, of course, for here, Guns N' Roses as the example.
Yeah.
But it brings up just organically, I was going to ask you this. Yeah, because you hear Gene Simmons still saying rock is dead, and JJ French is saying how rock isn't as what it was. I love the thought process of just stop bad mouthing rock and roll and praise the bands that are still getting it done successful, like a Pop Evil. Like
Yeah.
I don't know how you feel about it. I hate this whole rock is dead thing. It's
Yeah, I mean, I'd love
nuts.
to. I love that, man. I wish more people did embrace some of the bands that are still out there grinding. Because I know the journey, I know how hard it is, you know, and I know that at some point for most of us, just people. I mean, there's been tons of times in my career I was just like, look, do I really want to keep doing this? Is it really worth it? You know, because like sometimes you really don't understand the success, because even when you have levels of success, all you see are tour bus walls. It's almost like a prison. You don't always see the thousands of people who like your band or like your songs. All you see is the, you know, 3 or 4 comments that piss you off, and then it's like, okay, I'm done. I'm not even looking at social media.
Mhm.
It's almost like that. You know, your report card, you get all A's, you get that one F. It's like all you think about is that F, and
Yeah,
people are
man.
going around. Your parents are like, dude, it's okay, man. You did so good. You're like, who cares? I'm a failure. You know, this sucks. I don't want. So it's sometimes, man, this in this new era of social media, you can get comments right away. I mean, in the early days without this, if someone didn't like your band, who cares? You never saw them. They didn't show up at your show. Who cares? You know what I mean? But now you see the people that will never go to your show and don't like your band ever. And there's always people for every band, even Guns N' Roses, you know, which I can't understand. How can you not like Guns N' Roses? But they're out there, right? They're out
There
there.
are
But you
plenty
know,
of haters. Yeah, of
but you
course.
know what I mean? It's like when someone doesn't like your band, they were never going to go watch your band anyway, so their comment is straight
So like, why
irrelevant.
comments? Why
It's
comments?
irrelevant. Well, you can look at it a couple ways too. I mean, if someone's going to really comment, you must have pissed them off pretty good. They must hate your band. So I mean, look, I guess you're looking for a reaction. Is that better than the passive fan who just doesn't care about you or know you
Fair enough.
exist?
That's a good point.
So I mean, there's tons of ways to look at it, right? But yeah, I mean, I'd be lying to you. It'd be great if the rock community embraced more of the bands in general, right? Of course, I would love that. But at the same time, you can't focus on it, man. You got to just there's more competition, which is great because there's more opportunities for the average band to get a look, right? It's not all about getting a record deal anymore like it was in those days when we got that's all I thought I needed was to blow up, and in those days you get your record deal, it means nothing. You still need hit songs, you still need to tour, you still need to build a fan base. But now more than ever, geez, you go viral on something, you can end up being, having opportunity. And that's kind of truly what it's about. So you can't, for someone who, has had his own opportunities and still looking for more, can't be mad at people for getting opportunity. That's what it's about. But it would be nice if the rock community was able to lift up our community in ways that other genres maybe do. Maybe, banning I just think the thing that makes our community the way we kind of like the way we kind of what's the right word, the way we kind of hold our favorite bands close to us, right?
Hmm.
Like, this is my band, I'm Guns N' Roses, forget Metallica, then this Guns N' Roses is
Oh,
my stuff.
yeah,
You know
there are
what I
people
mean?
like
Like
that. Sure.
there's a
Very
pride that
protective and
rock and metal,
tribalistic almost.
right, there's a pride that rock and metal fans, where sometimes if you think about it in the pop sense or a hip hop or country sense, I love all. Oh, you like? I love all that band. But you think about the '90s, right? It was Pac and Big E. You chose a side, and
Mhm.
sometimes in rock and metal, it's still that way. But and that's look. I mean, everyone. The thing I think that makes rock and metal still so cool is it's people's identities, right? Like Guns N' Roses is your identity. Like you've probably been listening to them since you were a kid. Maybe it was the first CD you got. It was the first CD I got. So I mean, it
It
just kind
was.
of like,
I think. Okay.
yeah, it's your personal experience, right? It's not just Guns N' Roses. It's maybe life experiences that you had when you were listening to Guns N' Roses, right? It's maybe a family member that you were listening to them with, you went to the concert with, and you think about those memories with them that just solidify the greatness of what Guns N' Roses truly is. It's not just the music, it's the life experience you've had when they've been around as long as they have, right? And Pop Evil, now our eighth album, we've had a taste of some of that, and we get that sometimes, especially when I'm at home. Some of my close friends will be like, "Oh, I really love the first two Pop Evil records." And I'm like, "Well, did you even listen to the new records?" They're like, "No, I didn't even listen to it." But it's the first albums when they were with us and they were touring around. We were still younger, so they were around us more. We were house partying and jamming and just ready to
Mhm.
break. So, I understand that like those earlier records are the link that they have to the band. So of course that's why they like them better. That's nothing really to do with the music. So again, there's different ways why people like bands, they support bands. So getting them to lift you up in different ways is tough because it's about their link to you and their other bands. And you can't compete. If I was like, dude, you gotta like Pop Evil more than Guns N' Roses, you're gonna be like, well, I don't know about that because Guns N' Roses has 20, 30 years on us. So being out and being
Well, that might
professional.
not be the
You
fair
can't.
comparison, but it
It's
was always
right,
like
right,
I'd
right.
hear about, you had to
Yeah.
pick GNR or Nirvana.
Sure. Oh, there you go.
I
Yeah.
never understood that. So yeah, I've
That is
never
weird.
been of that ilk. I know there are
Yeah.
people like that. That is kind of funny. I know
Yeah.
I have you here for a limited amount of time, and to make that transition now,
Yeah.
hey, FYI, I don't always wear a Guns N' Roses shirt, even though it is a GNR podcast. It's just one of
Sure.
the few shirts that my son hasn't gotten applesauce on. So it's kind of whittled
I
down to
love it.
what just my GNR shirts.
I love it. I love it. He makes sure there's a special case, probably, right? He can't
Yeah,
touch those. I
I
love
know.
it. Yeah. Yeah.
Well, last time, because I think you did mention that Appetite was
Yeah.
your first CD, and we spoke
Definitely.
about some GNR covers you guys would do, or you would do back in the early days
Yeah.
of being a band and being a singer. But
Yeah.
I also I wanted to ask you, since you're a few years older than me, and do you remember 1991 when Use Your Illusion 1 and 2 came out? Do you
I do. I
how
do
old were
remember
you
that.
then? Did you
You know,
line up
I'm
at all?
I'm not exactly sure my age, but I remember when they dropped the double disc. It was just
Right.
so different, and you were wanting, and I was different, right? Like I was kind of like those fans. Like before I didn't like you before I liked you. You know what I mean? So right when those, obviously I had the first I mean, at Appetite, and then I remember looking at the artwork just being like, "Oh my god, this is awesome." You know what I mean? And like, I can't, almost like it was looking at like a soft porn or something. Like you were just, I had to make sure my parents weren't around when I'm looking at it or something. I'm like,
Yeah,
"Oh my
yeah, yeah.
gosh," you know. It was so shocking. I'd never seen like anything like that before. Obviously, I was young too. And then of course, you know what? Use you the you know the two the
The
two
Use Your
different
Illusion
records.
1 and 2.
Yep,
Yeah,
that's what it was. And two, in November Rain, right? Like when all that came out. I remember being like, "Wow, what is this?" Like, and the covers were, you know, very artsy, and what they had that kind of sketch of that girl reading a book or whatever it was. I think
you
it was.
sure?
And then I remember being like, and then of course you see the music videos, and you're like, "Oh my gosh, man, this is." I mean, Axl Rose was a movie star then because music videos were so big, and they were such a big part. You know, MTV generate. It was just starting to like
Yeah,
these bands, and Guns N' Roses were one of the first, right, that were spending millions of dollars on their music videos. So it was almost like a cinematic experience, you know. And I remember just, of course, you know, I was a singer, so always watching Axl. And in those days, I don't know if I really dreamed about being in a band at that then. I was just kind of falling in love with rock and metal, you know. And I remember being a little bit confused, being like, "Oh, well, do it." Well, I don't want to buy two records, you know. I mean, I was a young, you know, broke. I was like, I just want to buy the one record, you know. But then as it gets on, and you're kind of like, "Oh, wow, dude, this is cool. Let's buy both records," you know. So I remember it kind of the Guns N' Roses whole persona, at least in Michigan where I was, it was almost like it was like a spell on you, right? And once you caught it, it just every day, every month seemed to get you just used to you just fall a little more in love with it. And you were just like, wow, this is so good. Because again, this was so different. You know what I mean? And they just kind of came on the scene. And you know, at that point, I'm, you know, Detroit Rock City a little bit, like, you know, Kiss and stuff like that. But like like again, Guns N' Roses was just it was so reckless. It was so raw. It was just like, you know, you pictured if you went to dinner with those guys, that's actually he's got his bandana on. He just that's what he was. You know, Slash, he'd be there with his shades on, his hat, and he just, yeah, I'm getting spaghetti. What do you get? You know what I mean? Like he would just be, they'd be the same everywhere. So, you know, it started to really like just plant seeds and me just falling in love and wanting to be in a band. It was like, "Man, I want to be like those dudes." You know what I mean? And then of course Metallica, you know, so and Pantera. So again, it just that whole shift. And then of course I did love the 90s, the Seattle grunge. I loved Pearl Jam. You know, I was a big Pearl Jam fan as well. So it was just, you know, but I was always a song guy. You know, I get asked all the time about the albums, and I mean I can lie and say, "Oh, yeah, this album." And I thought albums were cool, but I was always, you got to remember in those days when I was kind of climbing, the CD singles. Remember those? Like you could get the
sure.
CD single that they did for like that window time, and I'll be like,
Yeah,
okay. And again, I didn't have a ton of money, so if I could get, you know, November Rain for $3, I'd rather do that than I actually had the Guns N' Roses albums. But you get the picture, right? Like in
sure,
those
sure,
days,
sure.
and rock was pop then, right? So you could get different songs. They were blended in with what you were listening to, not just on the radio, but because pop was more secular, it was everywhere. It was on the TV. It was on. It was everywhere you went. You could hear a Guns N' Roses track. It wasn't like you had to just go to the rock station. You know
Rock
what I
was
mean?
more accepted then. People weren't
Correct.
claiming it was dead back then.
Correct. Yes. So yes, you're right. Getting back to your question, the rock is dead. I disagree, man. If you look at the festival circuit, it's interesting though how metal and rock and hard rock especially have been more infused and kind of just brought together, which I love because I've always been more of a metal and hard rock guy. And obviously, when we started Pop Evil being a radio band, the hard rock version of Pop Evil was always just it was always just it was always right there because to get, you know, to get our breaks and to get in, hard rock sound was just that was radio at the time. Now we like to think with songs like Waking Lions, Breathe Again, you know, we've played a part in rock radio being a little bit heavier in ways. And of course all
Yeah,
these great bands now that have come up, these younger bands are just incredible. And you know, they're heavy, and their metal influence is very well apparent. So again, seeing the metal side start to shift and become, you know, I don't want to say more popular because it's always been popular, but you know what I mean, be more mainstream, at least at rock radio. It's exciting, and it's opened the door for us to be able to do things like we're doing on this album here with What Remains. So just super grateful for this evolution and where it's been and just our place in it. And just you know, like we said earlier in the interview, it's like we feel like we're at this place still where we, you know, it's up to us. We still have a lot that we can write the script in a lot of different ways to keep the band relevant and keep us going and moving forward. So we're looking forward to that challenge.
I look forward to seeing where Pop Evil goes from here. I still remember when I was earlier in my radio career when playing Trenches, you know, being that guy. It's like the new
Yeah,
song from Pop Evil and just
I
playing
love it.
that. So getting to
Yeah.
talk to you now is pretty special. And for the record, because there's still a lot more Pop Evil to come. the Lions are going to get that first Super Bowl. I was rooting for you
Man,
guys this year as a
man,
Giants
that was
fan
that
who
was
just was terrible. Yeah, their season was terrible.
sure, sure.
And by the way, congrats to Saquon. He deserved it. He deserved
Ah,
so.
dude, it was great to see for him. And obviously, being a Giants fan, you've got to taste at least
I've
some
tasted it,
success in
right?
your day. You got
Exactly.
to
So that's why,
experience.
and
That's
I'm
still one of my
younger.
favorite. That's one of my favorite Super Bowls when you guys upset Tom Brady. I love that. I couldn't
Oh,
believe it. That was amazing. You know what I
I
mean?
was
And
living in, I was doing radio in Cape Cod, Massachusetts at the time.
wow,
I'm lucky I
wow.
came home alive.
Yeah, that's for sure.
But
That's for
man,
sure,
I'm
man.
definitely. I want to let you know that
Yeah.
I was rooting hard for those Lions. So
Oh,
if
thank
not the
you.
Giants, let's get the Lions win the Super Bowl next year.
That means a lot, man. I'm hoping. Hopefully, we can get it done here next year. Would be sooner than later. Sooner than later would be better for both of us. So
Yeah,
we'll
for the
see.
Lions and new
Yeah,
Guns N' Roses music, but we got
I
we
love
got new
that. I
Pop
love that.
Evil music. So
For now, we got some new pop evils. So tide is over for
right
sure.
on. So Lee, thank you so much for your time. Hope we get to do this again.
I
That does it for
definitely.
this episode of Appetite for Distortion. When will we see the next one? In the words of Axl Rose concerning Chinese democracy, I don't know if soon is the word, but you'll see it.
Thanks to the lame ass security, I'm going home.